And we are live. Welcome to the stream, guys. Just going to go live on my Instagram as well, which you have to press a separate button for. So, Troy, Francis, James Tusk, world-class international dating coaches. How are you doing, James? You all right?
I'm not bad. I'm on a bit of an enforced detox in Thailand. So, keeping it relatively clean in a place called Phuket, which is a nice spot. And obviously gearing up for seeing you in Brazil in about a month's time in RIO Carnival, which is obviously the world's greatest party. So if you're not signed up, guys, watching this and you fancy the trip of a lifetime, which really, I'm a firm believer in, it should be on every man's bucket list, regardless of, just every man's bucket list, really. It's just an awesome event. It's I think 10 million people in Rio, lots of Brazilian tourists, everyone partying for 10 days. The whole country comes to a standstill, and Brazilians are incredibly friendly. So for guys with approach anxiety, it's an awesome place to be social. And gringos are in hot demand in Brazil. They really, really go crazy for foreigners. So it's just the time to go. I mean, consistently every year, we'll take guys who don't really pull a muscle, if I'm being frank, from the Anglosphere, the US, the UK, and they're sleeping with 4 or 5 girls in a week. And they're just like, their anxieties are blown apart. I mean, I've never taken anyone to RIO Carnival who hasn't gone back multiple years, either with us or just on their own, because it's that good. And we've obviously got access to, the list of the best parties. I know the lie of the land. I'll be going for 7 years. So it's going to be awesome. So if you're not signed up, get in touch with myself or Troy, info@jamestusk.com or Troy@realtroyfrance.com. RIO Carnival 2025 is the title, and we'll have a chat with you. We've got, I believe, 2 spaces from 10 remaining, so it's going to be awesome. I'm excited.
Indeed. And how's the sort of enforced detox going? Are you feeling good?
Yeah, actually, I mean, we're both used to burning the candle at both ends in a metaphorical and literal sense, and the odd drink here and there, but relatively clean living. You do feel good, I must say. It's being sober is underrated, and I always forget how good it actually feels. Yeah, and then possibly try and change the present moment via various nefarious means, which always backfires, because what goes up must come down, as we always seem to forget. And on the note of feeling a bit down, something that's obviously been prevalent in recent times with our clients is a few of them have gone through pretty rough breakups. Yeah, and indeed. I guess because me and you have obviously been around that bush many times, maybe some practical advice for how to move past seemingly very dark times, because it does seem, as ridiculous as it sounds, like we should all be that hero on the journey, the James Bond, the Thor, and obviously women are the side piece. The reality is modern men are way more emotional, I think, than women, and we're not taught how to process emotion. So if a girl fucks off, even if it was for the best, it was a bit of a toxic gig, which I had, it still fucking sucks, because women tend to move on very, very fast. It's just evolution. They have a limited window. We're the hopeless romantics. We're the ones sort of sobbing into our pillow. And it's just, I think it's very interesting how quickly women seem to be able to move on to a new man. And we're kind of left in the dust almost. It seems. I don't know what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, well, I think it's true. I think biologically we know that it's true, because I mean I know you were talking the other day to our client about the old war brides phenomenon. And if you think back to many centuries ago, when the people were coming in and pillaging the village, and then the men maybe got killed or got taken or whatever. The women had to adjust to that pretty quickly, and if somebody else was now running the place, and obviously the woman's natural instinct is for need for protection for herself and any children that she's got, they have to be able to adapt to that quite quickly, I think. So it makes a lot of sense on a sort of biological, if you're looking at it from an evo psych kind of perspective. And I mean, I think in experience, I think that is what generally tends to happen. Not always, but often tends to happen. The woman will be able to move on quite quickly, or more quickly than the guy anyway.
I think the interesting thing I've observed is, if you ideally you want to get over the breakup as fast as possible. So
Yeah.
Even if you want to go back, the best thing to do is move on in your own head, cut contact, delete numbers, blah, blah, blah. And then what I found is actually when you're focusing on getting new girls in and you're kind of actually enjoying being single again, lo and behold, the girl actually often comes back. She boomerangs out of the woodwork.
Yes.
So the best thing you can do, even if you think this could be the love of your life and it's a grave error on her part, is move on as if you're never going to see her again. And then the chance of getting her back are way harder than if you kind of mope around and think of some strategy to kind of like finagle her back in. That's my experience. But it is, I don't know why, but I've experienced pretty dire breakups, actually. I've been really all over the show. So I can completely empathize with people on this, with guys on this. It does get deep, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think there are some basic self-protection rules though that you have to put into place. And I mean, one of them is as soon as the rift has occurred, as soon as it's like, right, sayonara, you have to break all contact, and that means all contact. And that means, don't speak to her, but don't look at her socials. I mean, you can, if you want to be really hardcore, you can block and delete. You don't have to do that, but you have to at least protect yourself. There's no point looking at her socials. You don't want to talk to people that she knows. If you've got mutual friends, then you just want to move away from that, unfortunately, or at least for the time being. I mean, you've got to understand, this is like coming off of a drug or a substance. It's sort of like you're going to crave a bit of that thing. And then, but the problem is when you get a little bit of that thing, then it makes you want it even more. And then you're in a world of pain, particularly if she has moved on and if she's, in a different relationship or something like that. You're completely screwed. So you've got to think of that. You've got to do that. It's certainly in the initial stages, and I mean, arguably forever, but you've certainly got to do that in the initial stages.
Yes, 100% agree. And they've done studies where it has the same chemical effects in the brain as obviously hardcore drug addiction, right? Love addiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Life is all a game of feelings and chemicals in the brain, right? So it's the same as coming off a very hard drug, and you're gonna feel shit. And it's just the way the world works. But women often have a plan B and a plan C lined up. So very rarely, in my experience and working with clients, although the clients want to believe this is the case, that the girl just fucked off, it is very, very, very often the case the girl has fucked off to a new bloke. And there may or may not be some overlap there. There may be some kind of behind closed doors messages, maybe something more. But the reality is, unfortunately, women don't stay single long, especially in this day's simply kind of wokosphere market where men are rolling over themselves to get female attention.
Well, yes, I mean, in general, yes, it's because it's very easy. I mean, there's a lot of demand out. There's demand and supply, isn't it? And there's a lot of demand out there. So yes, theoretically, as soon as the breaks happen, she could probably go out and meet somebody that day, that hour. She could probably meet somebody and at least to sleep with, if not to end up dating. So yeah, 100%. But I mean, this is why, from the guy's point of view, I mean, it's another reason to learn the skill set that we teach, really, because apart from anything else, if you want to level up the playing field a little bit, you want to be confident that you're able to also go out and meet new people and have new experiences. And it's sort of like, you might not want to exercise that, you might not want to do it, but if at least you know that you could do it, that's going to put you in a better position. Because that's one of the problems. It's not the only problem. It doesn't mean, and I don't really agree with the whole thing of like, oh, the way to get over somebody is to get under somebody else. Because I don't think that really works, to be honest. But if you're...
Do you not think a bit of sexual separation does help?
How do you mean?
Well,
if you
having meaningless sex with 5 other women, do you not think that does create a bit of physical distance, or it doesn't?
It probably helps. I don't know. I mean, I'm good, sort of contradicting myself now. It probably does help somewhat, but I don't think it really helps in the way people think it does. I don't think it's just like, oh right, okay, I've ticked that box now I feel great. Because if you had a very strong connection with that original person, then somebody else, and sometimes it can make it worse actually, because you end up with somebody, and you're just like, what am I even doing? She's not even as good as the person that I broke up with. So it's not reliable. But I think probably what is worse is you get, she dumps you, and then you're sitting with your D in your hand, and you don't know where if ever you're going to meet anybody else ever again. I mean, that's got to be worse, right? So I think of the two, I don't think either is ideal, but I think that being able to meet new people is probably better.
I mean, as you said entirely, this skill set is so valuable because it is just a case of, right, get out the house, go and be more social, and just having some sort of female affection. Whether it's just conversations with girls or texting them backwards and forwards. You don't have to be fucking 5 different women to start to move past it. But when the only source of female affection in your life, it has been your girlfriend, which is the case for a lot of guys, you're fucked, aren't you? Because you don't have any other outlets, right? As much as it is to discuss your mum dressing you up, you know, in her favorite cardigan, you know, that's not going to provide much value. I mean, the reason I got into this whole thing was I was dating this girl, completely my standard thing, very non-committal, on and off for 4 or 5 years, you know, never really wanted anything serious with her. And eventually she just kind of was like, well, she kind of made signals about it, but didn't do anything. And she met a guy who it was like it's like a movie, isn't it? A guy that we really didn't get on, see eye to eye, an enemy of sorts, who was good looking, you know, charismatic, successful. And she essentially just hopped from me straight to him. And I thought, you know, being Jack the lad, it's not going to matter when I break up with her. I'm not going to give a fuck because we weren't even technically together. Mate, I was devastated. I felt like I'd had my heart ripped out, stamped on the ground. And the fact she was just clearly enjoying being with this guy. And what made it even worse is the guy then found out, like, she was seeing me secretly originally and decided to bin it off with her. In the end, he didn't even want to stay with her. So she left me for him, and then he booted her off. He didn't even want to be with her. So, and then I'm sorry to say, in a puddle of disgrace, I actually went back about 6 months later and started porking her again. And I just felt like, what am I doing? Like, I've defiled my any sort of level of self-respect here. But the reason I got into game is I decided to channel that negative energy into I didn't want to feel as hopeless or as helpless or as lost or as vulnerable as that again. So I was like, right, I've got to game. I've got to live in abundance with women. I've got to be able to flirt, learn how to approach, not get too bedded down with one girl. And that's what drove me, actually. I channeled those negative emotions into like, fuck this, a lot of anger, a lot of pain. And thank God I use it productively, because if you let it consume you, it can obviously fuck you in a variety of ways, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it like just going back to the breakup thing. You know, Train Spotting. You know, have you seen? You know that scene in the film Train Spotting where he's preparing to come off heroin, and he basically says, "Right, I've got my kit together," and he goes and locks himself in I forget where it is, like a flat or something, and he's like, "Right, I've got my what is it, like a bottle of orange juice, loads of sweets." A bucket to be sick in. Yeah, a box of Kleenex. And he basically prepares himself, and it's like, right, I've got all this stuff. This is all the stuff I need. Now I'm going to go into cold turkey. And it's a bit like that. It's a bit like that with the relationship, with the breakup, I think. I think you've got to be like, right, okay, now I've got to go into cold turkey over this. And, you know, and almost treat it like a withdrawal, because it kind of is a withdrawal, really. And part of that might be meeting other people, or it might not. I don't know. I mean, like last time when I had a big breakup, I actually went the opposite way, kind of as an experiment. This was like 3 years ago or whatever. Kind of as an experiment, I actually went the other way, and I thought, instead of doing that, or instead of trying to just randomly meet some other people or whatever, which I'd always done in the past, I thought this time I'm going to try and sit with the feelings, which is what they always say, isn't it? You know, sit with the feelings, man, and just try and experience it. And I actually tried to reduce my dopamine for a period of time. And I was quite hardcore about it. It was even down to things like not listening to music. I mean, I didn't want to listen to music that was too emotional anyway, but it was like not listening to music, just being very sort of doing whatever work that I had to do. I was going to recovery meetings, so there was that, exercise, and that was kind of it, and trying to keep things very flat. And I did that for about, I did NoFap as well. I did that for about 6 weeks. Was it the best thing to have done? Hard to say, really. I mean, I could have gone the other way, just partied and, you know, flown to South America and bought a load of Charlie or something. I chose not to do that.
That was later.
That was later. How was it? I guess it was all right. I think it was probably not the worst thing I could have done. It was just an experiment, because I've done this in so many different ways. And I mean, the usual way is to go out, and even if you're not drinking or doing drugs or whatever, it's like, okay, right, I'm going to meet some other people, and that's going to quell the pain. And I've as I said, I found that doesn't always work either. So I tried it this other way, and it was kind of, I think it's kind of good for getting some insight into yourself, and just sort of like, I mean, that's the way you're meant to do it, isn't it? It's like sitting with the pain, just experiencing it, letting it pass, recognizing it's not going to kill you, all of that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, and this concept from Stoicism of amor fati, love of fate, right? Love the highs, love the lows. It's all part of the human experience. You know, when we're dead, it's just black. But it can be beauty and pain in a way, if you can accept it and lean into it and not push it away. There is a certain power in acceptance, isn't there?
Well,
the mentality I was trying to tell the client in common was, look, the reality is she's sucking some other guy's dick, whether you like it or not. She doesn't give a fuck about you. She's the hero of her own, the heroine of her own story. You're the hero of your own story. You know, you've got to realize that someone who's not meant for you and is with someone else does not give a fuck about you anymore. So by allowing that person to live rent-free in your life and cause you a lot of pain, you're actually giving massive power away to someone else, which I just don't want to do, especially if they don't actually want to be with me. It's like, why the fuck would I not take control of self-mastery and conquer that?
Yeah, exactly. You have to become sort of selfish in a way. I mean, which is not a bad thing, especially if somebody's left you. Then it's like, right, okay, I've now got to, all the focus now is on me, because essentially, and I mean, I asked the client in question about this, because really he shouldn't even know that she's like, how did he even know that she's with someone else? Because if you've done the other things correctly, like if you've broken all contact, if you're not speaking to anybody, he wouldn't even have known. The reason he knew was because he spoke to a mutual friend and he called her and all this kind of stuff, which is problematic, because as soon as the words have been said, as soon as it's like, right, see you later, it's game over. She can do anything she wants, right? And the difficulty with, getting into contact again is that you might find out something you don't want to know. If you look at her socials, you might see something you don't want to see. And, if you're in this process of like having to move forward, whether you want to or not, you don't want it. That's like a relapse. Do you know what I mean? You click on her story, you see something like, oh, fuck, where is she? That's like a mini relapse. It's going to take your head back into the whole thing. And just for your own sake, you don't want to do that,
Yeah,
and also, point. And also, quite frankly, I mean, in a way, as hard as it is to say, it's also none of your business, right? Because she's going to move on, she's going to do what she's going to do, and that's her journey, and that's, it's a tough pill to swallow, but that's just how it is, right? That's her journey, but it's now got nothing to do with you anymore. From the moment that bombshell's been dropped, it's like your paths are now separate, and you have to focus on your path, and she's, her path is like whatever, it's irrelevant, right?
And it's essentially Sturstone summed up, isn't it? It's control what you can control and let go of the rest. And you can't control. Well, you can't really control. We're not living in it in the Middle East. You can't really control your girlfriend's actions, essentially, anyway, in the Western world. But especially when she's not technically with you. I mean, you have no jurisdiction.
Yeah,
as much
exactly.
As I know, I've really that because I'm very possessive, very jealous, and that's something I've really struggled with. But again, I think just realizing what you can't control and the stress it's going to cause you, right? It's just not for the greater good.
Yeah. So I think you have to. It's like self-protection, really. In the end, it's like, okay, like as soon as that bombshell's dropped, it's like, right, it's game over now. We're in the Wild West. She can do whatever she wants. She can bring 5 guys around tonight and have a party or whatever. It's like it's entirely and you can't do anything about it. And moreover, you don't have the right to do anything about it because it's her journey, it's her life, right? She's gonna fuck up. She's gonna do and it's like your girl. I mean, like she got together with some guy and then that didn't work out. So she maybe in retrospect she kind of dropped the ball there, but that's her problem, right? It's not. So, and I've always been quite hardcore about this. And it was funny because the client in question was saying, oh, I have to get used to this red pill way of thinking as opposed to, what mainstream society tells us. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure it is quite kind of red pill. I think actually even in mainstream dating advice, you get the same thing. It's like, you've got to go no contact. You've got to, and it's just common sense, isn't it? Because as soon as that rift has happened, like I say, it's all bets are off, right? And you've got no jurisdiction in there anymore if you ever did. And you just could end up making your situation a fuck ton worse. If you 100% do, find out.
You 100% do. And then the problem is often guys will be thinking about the girl, not really move on. They're not really socializing elsewhere. And then they'll let the girl come back, which often will be the case, right? So it doesn't work out with a new guy or she gets bored and she messages the, boomerang, as they call it. And suddenly you're letting her back in when actually there was a reason you guys broke up. And the client in question, they definitely were not a good fit. And he wasn't even seemingly invested, which kind of I empathize with because I've been in that position before. But inevitably, when she's with someone else, suddenly you're like, no, it was the love of my life, right? So, but
it's always what what when you've lost something, you're like, oh no, it was so important, and
apart from herpes, I didn't regret.
Yeah. So,
But I mean, fundamentally as well, I think something that often comes up when I see guys going through harder breakups is the scarcity element. They're not really out there talking to people. They're not being social. They're simply introverted, and they'll sit kind of in their house listening to Lana Del Rey, kind of masturbating about the memory of the ex. It's just a shit show, isn't it? You've got to. I know, the purest approach. You could say, I think you've got more skin in the game with understanding how you handle yourself because you've been involved in this industry for so long. But for the average guy, I think probably best mainstream advice is get out and be social. Don't worry about necessarily getting laid, but just go talk to people, get out of the house every day, get to the gym, stick with your habits, routines. Don't throw those out the window because that's gonna, if you just sit there thinking about things, you just create this complete storm in your head of nonsense, don't you? And it just doesn't. You can't think your way out of that. You've got to take action and just go and be social.
I think that's right, and I'm not necessarily advocating what I did as being the right thing for everybody. It was just something I wanted to try because I'd done sort of the other way so many times, and also, to be honest, I was a little bit burnt out as well at that point. I was a bit like, oh, fuck, like I just, so, but that's to do with age, and it's to do with having experienced this stuff differently. But yeah, I think in the main, and also as well, it depends. Like, I mean. Another issue that's come out of that whole situation with the client is that he's also talking about somebody that he was really only with for a few months and not even that seriously. So, I mean, I think there's a qualitative difference between if you've been with somebody for multiple years and it's actually, it's got some weight in your life. And I think another problem here is that a lot of guys fall too hard too quickly. And it's like, oh man, my girlfriend, my girlfriend's like putting a lot of pressure on me about what to do. And it's like, well, how long are you seeing each other? 3 months. It's like, dude. She's not even fucking like I don't. That's not hardly even a relationship at that point. Do you know what I mean? You don't even fucking know her. You don't know each other, and it's a bit like as well. And this is another problem to do with scarcity because as soon as they meet somebody who's like will have sex with them and kind of is affectionate to them, it's like right, all in. And that's a mistake I think as well because you just don't know people. It takes a long time to really get to know people,
And you're still fundamentally in scarcity, right? Because a lot of guys come into this game, they've got massive scarcity, and then they're kind of meeting the first girl they find, and then just kind of being like, oh well, that's the game thing solved for me. It's like, no, you're still needy motherfucker, so that's not going to fly. And so, we've all struggled with this.
Yeah. So I mean, does that excuse? Does that? I don't know. It's just that I'd been with somebody for like sort of multiple years, and then we broke up, and it's like, and obviously my experience in this whole thing, I sort of obviously got my experience from my life and teaching this stuff and traveling around and stuff. So scarcity wasn't really the issue for me. It was more like, right, I want to have a bit of a reset here. But for the average guy in the street, if you've been seeing somebody, if you've had massive scarcity and then you've been seeing somebody for 3 months and then she suddenly disappears, it's like, I don't want to say get a grip, but it's a bit like, look, there's a certain weight that's attached, I think, when it's a longer term thing. And and really, when you're talking about these things, oh yeah, I've been seeing it for 4 months. It's like it's not really you hardly even know each other, bro. And people have got to man up a little bit with that. I think if that's not being too cruel about it.
No, I'd agree with that. I think they say divorce is one of the most apart from like maybe losing a child, I think, or a parent, divorce is like. After that, right? So when you're living with someone, you own a property with them, maybe there's a couple of kids involved, you've known them intimately for 5, 6, 7 years. That's a lot more impactful. And I guess what's the way to phrase it? It is a case of just toughening up and realizing that there are so many options out there, but it's we could. The problem is everyone's reality is their own reality, right? Their own perspective. So it's all very well us saying that. Some people we know just a bit more stoic with things, whereas some people are a bit more sensitive. I do think fundamentally, guys, from what I've seen when we're teaching this, do feel way too hard for women way too quickly. And I do think that comes down to just a lack of, probably somewhat a lack of self-esteem as well. Because I think if you're not really happy, which a lot of clients are, and I've been there and you've been there with who you see in the mirror, you're almost needing people in your life to kind of sugarcoat that, right? Make you feel better. And so going within and actually dealing with those demons really is the only way long term to get through it, because if you don't and you never really like who you see in the mirror, you're always going to run back into the same problems. And I feel with the client, and he's agreed with us on this, his self-esteem and self-worth needs work, but I fear with him, unless he really figures that out, it's just going to repeat. It's just going to be on autopilot. It's the same girl, different girl, same result, right?
Well, one of the things that he'd said to us about this and before was that like he openly admitted that he's got a problem with falling too hard too quickly, you know, and it's like, how do I keep things casual? How do I not just get enmeshed, you know, immediately with somebody? And you know, I'm not sure I don't know what an easy answer to that is, except just don't. But I mean, you've got to go into these things a little bit guardedly, because you don't know how somebody's gonna act. And as I say, really, I mean, I don't know if you would put a figure on it, but I would, until you know something like 6 months, a year, something like that, you don't really. You're still very much in my view, in the sort of the very early stages of it. It's not even really a proper relationship. Does that make sense? I mean, you know, you get some guys that he's like, yeah, I've got my girlfriend, you know, and it's like, oh wow, how long have you been seeing her? Like a month. It's like, how's it even? It's not even a thing yet.
Yeah.
I mean, in my view, but then that's coming from a position of being incredibly avoidant, and maybe that's not the healthiest way of looking at it. But you know what I mean? It's like, especially in today's dating
arguably better than falling way too hard and way too fast for people. Because I mean, I'm guilty of this as well. I typically fall in love with women or lust with women very quickly. And actually, something that happened a lot with me was on first dates. I may sleep with a girl or I may not, but I'd fall in lust very fast, and I'd be, you know, messaging them and almost push them away. You know, it was something I really had to work on. So I made a rule where after the first date, I wouldn't message them for 48 hours. I really tried to consciously work on that stuff. But
yeah,
it's something that I'm guilty of a lot. And it can be very endearing for some women, because they're like, it's almost that kind of Casanova effect of, oh, he's really into me in a good way, and he doesn't come across as needy. Some women are like, hold on, whoa, what's going on? Like, and again, I think it comes down to lack of self-acceptance, lack of self-worth, not really truly accepting yourself on a deep level and needing people to fill that void. And again, you know, self-improvement helps that, but also just being consciously aware of it. Maybe I don't know. Is anyone ever really happy with themselves? Fuck knows.
Probably, possibly not. I mean, I guess it's an ongoing journey, isn't it? But I think, going back to the thing about options, though, I think ideally a guy needs to be in a position where he thinks that he's got access to options, even if he doesn't exercise that, even if he chooses not to go out and date a load of other people or whatever. He's got to feel like he could potentially do that. And of course, any guy can, really, specifically or particularly if he's got access to be able to travel and go to some different places, you know. The worst situation probably is like you were sort of intimating, is sort of like you're sitting there, you've split up with her, she's off doing whatever, and you're sitting there in your small town, and you don't know where the next girlfriend's coming from, if you're ever going to meet anyone else again. And that's probably the worst situation to be in. So, and luckily, that's why we teach this stuff, because at least it gets you over that bit.
Well, you know, and I've been guilty of this before, right? You know, you're going through a bit of a low period, you break up with a girl, and then you're fucking, you know, thinking about her, and then you're fucking masturbating to her memory. I mean, that's even worse. It's just absolutely, you're betting down the subconscious, the fact she's fucked off. And it's just a bad place to be. And I've done everything, every which way thing with breakup. So I do understand how messy they can be, and how the best thing a guy can do really is just, as you said, delete all numbers and just not be able to contact her. Because if you can actually hold out for a month, 2 months, often, again, like we mentioned, the girl does get back in touch. And then from a kind of emotionally sort of detached point of view, because you've had a bit of time to you know, see where you're at, you can make a decision. Do I really want to see her again now, or do I not? But the problem with not deleting the numbers is often guys will get drunk and needy and send a message, which drives her away further, kills all chance of her coming back anyway. And you're not moving past her anyway. You know, so you've got to move on.
I agree. I think the important thing as well is, though, you shouldn't, in my opinion, you shouldn't do that as a strategy, because and actually people sell this as a strategy. I've seen like YouTube channels and websites where you've got guys going, oh, get your ex back, and it's like, right, what are the steps? Okay, go, no contact for 3 months, and people are doing it deliberately as a strategy. But the problem with that is you're not really moving on, because in the back of your head there's always that thought of, oh, if I just keep up this no contact thing for another week, maybe she's going to call, and you're looking at your phone all the time waiting for her. And you can't do that. You have to let go of it. You have to you know, from that point, you have to, particularly if she's ended it, you have to be like, right, it's now as though we never met. It's now as if she's dead, or she'd never existed. And you have to just move forward with that assumption very much in mind. Now, if she does come out of the woodwork and she does get back in contact. Okay, fine, but that shouldn't be something that you're trying to make happen or you're trying to do this thing to get, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, on the note of going out there and being more social, where how should guys start with that? Should they kind of leverage a bit of anger and pain and
yeah, I actually think well, they should come to Rio with us, 26th of February to the to the 8th of March, because that will certainly blow the cobwebs away. But yeah, I think you can actually lean into anger, and you can lead it. And I'd certainly done that in the past. I'd sort of leaned into. Same. I would have a resentment, as they say in AA. I have a resentment against the girl because she'd be like, "Oh, this, she dumped me, she this, she that, whatever." But I would then channel that into like, right, okay, so what can I get, And again, people like our client was saying, "Oh, this red pill view that you guys have got." It's like, no, I was like this like 2 decades ago, before this stuff had even been invented. I think it's just basic self-protection and basic self-interest. Be like, right, okay, that this person has effectively done me wrong. If it's a situation like our clients, so fuck them. And now, how do I move on? What can I get? And I think that is, and you can use that anger to fuel you, or that frustration, that sort of resentment.
Well, he's going to be with us in less than a month in Rio Carnival, 26th of Feb to the 8th of March. So hopefully he'll be blowing off some steam in more ways than one. And again, best place in the world for social. It really is. It's a fantastic place to take guys. And just people are blown away by how social Brazilians are. They just love socializing. They love meeting foreigners. It's such a cool place to be. And obviously in Europe, where a lot of the clients come from, it's terrible weather in mid-Feb. So it's just an awesome place to be. It's 40 degrees in Rio. It's going to be an absolute blinder. Myself, Troy, Les, Joe, a couple of other coaches in attendance, and 10 clients. So if you want to be a part of that, send us an email, info@jamestuss.com or troy@realtroyfrancis.com with the title Rio Carnival 2025. Should we go through some of these questions, comments, anything worthy in there?
Yeah, indeed. And put questions in the chat. If anyone's got any questions or comments so far, put them into the chat.
I'm chilling in Sao Paulo at the moment. You'll get in touch, man. You're welcome to come down and meet us in Carnival, even if you just do a day or something. If you get some feedback on what you're doing, 100%. You should definitely come down. Nana Das, did you finally beat your approach anxiety? Absolutely not. If you guys want to talk to women, you can buy my course. Sure, link it below. I'll be the first to purchase that. Sound like a reputable dating coach, Nana Das. Is a girl saying she's sick? Just no reason to flake. Yeah, it can be. Often if they offer an alternative, right, that's a good sign. But if they just like last minute, half an hour before the day, I'm ill, you look at the actions, right? It's kind of disrespectful. It's not really chomping at the bit to see you, isn't it? Why do we have, as men, such a predilection to chase what runs away from us? Because as soon as a girl's like, oh, I'm into you, I'm like, what's wrong with her? Get rid of her.
Yeah.
Women who have zero interest in me, thinking that's the right. Why is that? Like, what is that?
Well, I don't know, but women are like that as well, and this is why this is what we spend a lot of time trying to teach men to not be as available, to not be as like chasing and needy, and
like the cold Russian 10, Svetlana.
Yeah. So I mean, with that question, I mean, it could be, it might be, it might not be. I mean, we need some context and stuff, but again, I think it's. I mean, why ask the question? If you if you've got abundance, it doesn't really matter, or it matters less, because shit's going to happen, right? You're going to meet people, and it's whether you're using dating apps or you're using, your cold approach or whatever it is, right? You're going to meet people, and some of them are not going to come through. And the point of all of this is that you're meeting so many people that it becomes you're less bothered about, like, oh yeah, she said she's ill, she didn't text back, she didn't, like, whatever. It shouldn't be something that you even have to ask a question about, because you're just moving forward the whole time. You're bringing new people in the whole time, so it becomes it assumes less importance in your mental landscape.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Hi, Troy and James. Thanks for doing this live. How do you personally approach this mental shift to let rejection roll off your back while staying motivated and upbeat for the next interaction? Well, I mean, something that I've suggested guys do before is think about this hero archetype they have. Like, what would the most alpha male boss version of me do in a different situation? So even if I'm not emotionally feeling it, I will try and act as if. So You know, if I'm bitching and whining about a girl, I'll, you know, that's not wanting to see me, I'll go out and just go and be social and approach some more. So you don't have to feel like doing the right action to do the right action. And often in life, you're not going to feel like doing the right action, but you can still do the right action. It's your ability to not be swayed by emotion, because we always say men operate from values, women and children operate from feelings. So, I mean, again, just relating it back to the breakup stuff. I mean, look, essentially emotional mastery is the ability to realize you're not your emotions. And it's okay to feel down and sad, but that shouldn't then lead into serious consequences, right? To be able to accept that and accept you feel down, and even sometimes not try and change your state. I think something that I always try to do, and a lot of guys do, is try and change that negative state. And sometimes, as you said, Troy, it's better just to sit in that and accept you feel shit and actually say out loud, okay, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling down. And that in itself, that's acceptance, actually negates the feeling a bit, doesn't it? Rather than trying to run away from it.
And sometimes something that helped me recently was basically just saying it's okay to feel down, it's okay to feel sad, because I think and it kind of is, you know, and like you said, I mean, it's the key thing really is whether it affects your actions or not. And ideally, the most stoic version of you, and I don't always live up to this by any means, but ideally, the most stoic version of ourselves would just be like, okay, I'm feeling shit, but I'm still going to go do these things anyway. And Alex Hormozy talks about this actually in a different context about business, and he talks about that having to do the boring stuff, you know, every day, having to get up, do the boring stuff, you know, that you don't necessarily want to do. And he sort of says the most successful people are the people who are able to do that for the longest period of time. And it's kind of the same with this stuff, really. You get knockbacks, you feel sad, you get rejections, blah, blah, blah. But if you keep doing it, then ultimately you will find success, or success will come your way, because statistically it's kind of impossible for it not to. The problem is most people give up too quickly, and they just don't continue the process consistently.
And Mike Tyson had a similar quote, which is discipline is doing something you really don't want to do and loving it. You know, which is an interesting frame. And it's like, yeah, I've got to do that thing. I might as well fucking enjoy it, right? And something I'll ask myself in the moment is the thing I'm not really fussed about doing, whether it's, you know, doing the half an hour Portuguese or Spanish, or sometimes going out and being social, is how can I make this more fun? How can I make this 10% more fun? How can I enjoy this 10% more? And it usually comes down to some sort of self-amusement or gamifying it. And if you can just do that with stuff that you're not particularly, you need to be doing, but you don't want to do, the stuff becomes easier to do. So you've got to just think of the greater good, right? Often the stuff we don't want to do is the stuff we absolutely need to do, and it's going to actually cause our life to be more fulfilled.
Yeah, the other good thing with this stuff is that actually being social, and I mean Torero, RIP, used to talk about this, of course, as, you know, game being therapy, and actually going out and talking to people and having a bit of a banter with people is therapeutic in itself. So it's quite fortunate.
We've both been in some very dark times, I know, because obviously I know you very well off camera. That sounds bizarre. Yeah. I know you in an intimate way off camera. I know you on a personal level off camera. As you know, Ian, we're both very probably bipolar in some senses, right? Our moods are like this, like yo-yos, but we've both been in some incredibly dark times. And actually, the simple ability to walk out your house, stop thinking about what you're thinking because you can't think your way out of it, and just go and be social because you have to be present, and just talk to a few people. You can't argue with Torero's advice. It saved me from some dark places, and I'm not going out having an orgy or anything like that. I'm simply going out, maybe sitting at a bar, talking to a couple of guys, maybe one girl, whatever, and suddenly I'm not in my own head anymore, overthinking things and like feeling really, really bad about something, right? So that's so underrated, this stuff, you know. And again, fuck this idea of this label of day game. Really, what we're doing is being social, right? That's all it is. And you just happen to be social with women a lot, so you go on lots of dates.
Yeah,
but,
and it's
it's
akin to, it's similar to exercise in that regard, where exercise you may not feel like doing it, but when you do it, it has this physiological effect that it does make you feel better, even if you didn't want to do it. Now, I'm pretty consistent with the gym and stuff, because it just that's just my nature, you know. I mean, I just like to go, and it's sort of good for mental health and everything else. I've actually had a few days off because I've been feeling quite under the weather. Like, I've had a cold, I've been feeling pretty shitty like the last week or so. So I actually had quite a number of days off, which is sort of unusual for me. And then I went yesterday, and I didn't really feel like going, and I was like, oh, I can't fucking, you know. And I just did a few things. It wasn't like some crazy workout or anything, but I did some cardio, and then I did a couple of like small weight things. And lo and behold, you come out feeling better, and you can't even help it. Even if you don't want to feel better, you still feel better, you know. And it's a bit like that with the socializing stuff as well.
It's 100%. It's a stack habit, right? So when I go to the gym, I'm doing it because I'm a vain fuck and I want to be in good shape, right?
Yeah,
that's okay. I want to look good with my shirt off. But the reality is, part of the reason I am hooked on the gym is because it makes me feel good. And it takes me out of a bad place. And, you know, you can substitute some white power in to do that. But ultimately, that will make you feel bad. Whereas the gym, it's never made me feel bad, right? It might make me feel a bit tired, but your dopamine, your serotonin, your endorphins are through the roof. What's even better is, and I love doing this, stacking the gym stuff with the socializing. So I think gyms are massively underrated for approaching it. You're jacked up in endorphins. You see hot girls who are also jacked up, and you go and open them because no one opens anyone in the gym. So I've been doing that a bit in the gym in Phuket. There's lots of Russian girls here. It's been good. And yeah, again, in a calibrated way, you're feeling awesome. So I can't emphasize enough how much you guys will on a daily basis not want to socialize, but if they just get a few reps in, build some momentum, how good they fucking feel. Like it really does make you, again, the disease is always overthinking, right? You're in the future or you're worrying about the past, but when you're socializing, you have to be present, especially with a hot girl, and it's just fun, you know, and you feel good. So I don't know why we forget this. We forget this stuff so often, don't we? And we're just, I'll do it another day. But for your own mental health, it's so important to be exercising, to be social. Try and do the dopamine nation stuff, which is lean into doing hard things, because the pain and the pleasure centers are located in the same region of the brain. So it's like Anna Lemke uses this idea of a seesaw, right? So when you push on the pleasure lever, you have some beers or do some chang. It has to balance out. So the pain lever comes up, and what goes up, you feel shit. Whereas if you deliberately lean into self-inflicted adversity, do hard things like go to the gym, hit a really hard workout, go and socialize when you're not feeling it, you're leaning into pain and you feel pleasure. So it's just remembering that simple equation: do hard shit and try and do it from a position of self-amusement, gamification, having fun, and suddenly life's okay. I think we often just create our own prisons, don't we? Sean Stevenson, may rest in peace, the small guy in a wheelchair, gave a great talk, prisoner of your own mind. And essentially it's just, we create our own mental prisons as to why we can't do stuff. And actually that's why I like watching videos from people like him who are in an objectively shit position, because I'm just like, I'm whining about some girl or some threesome I didn't have or something over. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just being a bitch. And I really don't like playing the victim, because for a lot of my life I played the victim without realizing I was playing the victim. And I'm just like, actually, what am I worrying about, right? It's the first world problem, very top of Maslow's hierarchy. It's not actually something to worry about. I'm not some 18-year-old on the front line who's just had his leg blown off by a landmine, whose missus is cheating on him back in Kiev or Warsaw. What am I worrying about? So that, again, perspective helps a lot as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Although it's difficult to keep that in mind, because
it is, it's a daily process. Something that you have to do on a daily basis.
Because you're stuck in your own head, aren't you? You're stuck in your own reality. And so if I feel down, I just feel down. And it's like, yes, obviously, objectively, there are people in fucking a million times worse situation than I am, but I still feel down for whatever reasons, right? So it's trying to remind yourself of those things, I think.
It is. And one of the reasons I try is because you see so much poverty. Even in big cities, I go to Buenos Aires, Bogota, right? I'm bitching about, I'm hungover and I didn't pull that girl last night. I walk out on the street, there's some bird on the street, mother with her 2 kids, like begging for money. I'm just like, although it may not in the moment make me feel that much better, because I still feel emotionally a bit down, you suddenly have perspective. So for a lot of the time, just walking therapy, every day walking, going for a walk, seeing what's going on in the world around me.
Yes, getting outside is,
better.
Yeah, getting outside is really important. I think walking is it's just
walking therapy. What better way to explore? You do the steps, and also you kind of work through problems. There's a guy, a really interesting guy, I'll send you the article, but essentially he walks around Japan for 10 hours a day, and he's written like 7 bestsellers, because you have such clarity if you go for like a long walk or something. It's some ridiculous thing this writer Tim Denning was quoting, I was like, fuck, I should do more walking, because not only then are you feeling good, get that hypnotic rhythm of just being on the exercise thing, you're also opening yourself up to be social, because you're always going to see the opportunity to banter or to use someone, and you're going to get perspective on, fuck, I'm not lying on the street with a fucking needle in my arm about to die. I'm not a kid going through trash to get their fucking meal of the day. Really, again, as Naval Ravikant says, you're at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the brain is always going to create problems. But really, it's not really that big a problem, right? It's a first world problem. So maybe this, hopefully, some nuggets and wisdom here for guys. I mean, we're really just spitballing this. It's just stuff that's coming up, but it's all very, very important. I think managing your own mental health and being on top of your own thoughts and emotions and not being a slave to them, it's the difference between living a good life and a shit life. And it's unfortunately, we are on our own. So
yes,
someone that's been a complete slave to their emotions and thoughts most of their life and actually hasn't really had many problems, but I've created them. I can empathize with how hard this is or how weird this might sound, but it's so important. I mean, we know many a good man who snuffed it because they couldn't deal with their own thoughts in their head. There's nothing objectively wrong with their life. They haven't got a terminal illness. They're fine. They've got plenty of money, family, they've got friends, but they've killed themselves. And it's like, fuck me. Again, just thoughts about their reality.
They say it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem,
Exactly.
which is usually the case. But yeah, man, I mean, it's scary where stuff can take you. But I don't know, man. You've got to look outside and think, okay. And this is another reason why walking and traveling and stuff, walking around and also traveling are beneficial, because you get to see how big the world is and how many people there are out there and all these different realities. And it's very easy to get stuck in. It's all about getting out of your own head, really, because it's in a
overthinking. It's a disease, right? And you need perspective. And again, this one big on this book, Practicing the Power Now. I would say it's not saved my life, but it gave me massive perspective and definitely just took me from very dark places out to actually, what the fuck am I worrying about? And that's not trivialized problems. Like, we all have problems, but it's how you view them, right? And it's just your ability to get on with it and move past it.
I think it was Hormozy who was talking about this. I correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's somebody else, but the most effective person, the most stoic alpha, sort of version of yourself is the guy who something terrible happens and he just shakes his head and just carries on. It doesn't affect his day to day at all. It doesn't affect the habits.
Awesome mentality.
Yeah, and then the most flanly version of ourselves is like, somebody doesn't reply to our text message and we have a breakdown for 6 weeks and we don't get out of bed, and ideally we want to be more towards this one where it's like, okay, you talk about Edison, the factory burning down, the factory's burned down, okay, fine, I'm just going to carry on and do the things that I need to do anyway, regardless, and it has no effect on the behavior.
Well, it wasn't even that. He actually flipped it. He flipped on his head and he called out his family, goes, look, guys, it was like 7 years worth of inventions that are all going to be released and making millions. And he just went, apparently the worker with him just was completely like flabbergasted because he didn't even like look sad. He quickly rushed to get his family, brought them all out and was like, you'll never see a fire burn as brilliant as this, which is a bit psycho almost, but it's like, fuck it. It's really leaning into the everything is a gift mentality, right? And what's the amor fati, love of fate, right? So what we talking about here is mastery, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean another character. I mean, I've been watching Mad Men a lot, all the Mad Men recently, and I mean,
here we go. I know you can bring up PD.
So Don Draper is another example of this. Like when and he cheats on his wife incessantly, but when she finally basically gets fed up and she finds another dude and divorces him, his reaction to it is incredibly stoic. I mean, he's just like, oh, okay, but he just goes into work, carries on doing what he has to do, carries on seeing other women and stuff like that. Now, it might be that he's really cut up inside about it. He probably is, but he doesn't allow it to affect his behavior. Now, he's probably not a perfect example because he's also obviously a functional alcoholic and he's whatever, like does a bit of everything to sort of get through. But nevertheless, that's probably more like the stereotype that we want to be leaning towards, rather than.
Well, I actually think he's a good archetype to lean for because he's an anti-hero. He's a perfectly imperfect individual like we all are. And the reality is, the James Bond, the Don Drapers, not in terms of what they're actually doing, flying helicopters or whatever, but how they are as people, a bit fucked up inside, like we all are. We've got our demons, blah, blah, blah. And still the ability to almost have this amused mastery frame to life, right? Which is you're the adult masculine. She's the childlike feminine, a little girl making noise. But from a loving point of view, you're just not flustered, right? If an 8-year-old girl was trying to take the piss out of you, well, you wouldn't be. You'd just be laughing you wouldn't take them seriously. And that's how we've got to be with women. You've got to be that. You've got to. Rich Cooper, to be fair, said it. And he goes, look, she wants to be with a fucking giant, right? So if you're not the best version of yourself, if you're not the hero version of yourself, why the fuck would she be with you, right? And there's a great concept as well, from Stoicism: act as if nothing at all bothers you. Right, so that's a great example. Don Draper walks in, his wife's cheating, and it's just like, oh, okay, whatever. And I think that's a great archetype or behavioral kind of attitude to life to strive for, which is just, it's not that big a deal. And as someone, again, that's been a slave to his emotions most of his life, I think that's a worthy thing for me to strive towards, and it's something I try and do. Obviously, we're not always there, right?
Yeah. I think the key thing for me, really, the key learning point is the behaviors. It's like, okay, whatever's happening with the emotions, the behaviors don't change, and it's easier said than done. But that's, I think, what we need to strive towards.
100%. So again, operating from values rather than feelings, right? So I'm a social guy. What does a social guy do? He goes out and he talks to 3 people a day, regardless of how he feels. What's the guy who's in shape do? He goes to the gym every fucking day at 7 a.m. like he's agreed to himself. And the more you can build that self-trust and self-belief with sticking to your own word, the more self-esteem you actually have. So that's the obvious way to kind of build yourself up as the man you actually want to be. Good day, Mr. Justin. Greetings from where he is, NYC. AT says, what was the most significant improvement each of you made to your game in 2024? Well, for me, it was stopping doing cocaine, and that's lasted all of 2 days. It was being less needing women less for probably about a decade. My entire life revolved around that essentially, can I get laid? Can I sleep with girls? It was a very unmasculine place to be, really. But that's the reality of my life, right? For a long time now, I'm less needing of the validation. I can kind of take a girl, or I can leave a girl. It's not that big a deal. I know fundamentally she's not going to make my life. I've got to do that myself, right? As Robert Glover said, she's the cherry on top rather than the whole cake. So really betting that down as a fundamental, and it's nothing I did in particular. It's just, I think with age and just experience in this industry, I've just come to that. That's just how I feel about things now. Women have less weight in my life. And that's not to say, guys, you need to go through a significant period of actually prioritizing speaking to women and trying to get laid, because you can't avoid that.
Well, I think both of us have had that similar journey, and maybe it's partly to do with. I mean, I've got quite a few years on you, but I mean, maybe it's partly to do with age as well. But you do get to a point where it just matters less. And I mean, in answer to his question, well, I've had a girlfriend in all 2024, so my game's got worse. But if there was
a relationship, technically may have got better, because it's all in stages, isn't it? It's like Les in a relationship. So although approaching may have got rusty, his ability to hold frame and actually run a relationship, which is a whole different game in itself, is better. So you're not. It's not getting. It's just what you're focusing on right now.
Exactly. And there's always learning points. Whatever situation you're in, there's always learning points. But and that's another thing, isn't it? That's another sort of Hormozy like nugget, which is like there's no failure, there's only lessons. There's either success or there's a lesson, and that's So there's that. But on a serious note, I think I would concur with what you said, which is like just caring a bit less. To be honest, is another way of putting it. Just caring a little bit less about it. Just putting a bit less. The less that you care, the more of a valuable object you are.
That's so true.
And it's really hard to get there. I don't know if there's a sort of a magic pill that you can take that just makes you get there. I think with us, it's like because we've been doing this stuff for such a long time. And maybe it's partly to do with age as well. You just start to get a little bit like, take it or leave it, and that ironically makes you more attractive than the guy. There's oh my god, I just need it. I need it to happen. And but at the same time, like you said, that's not an excuse to just be like to sit in your bedroom and just be like, okay, fine. Because if you're living in scarcity and you haven't experienced abundance, then you haven't earned it yet, if that makes sense. Like there's got to be a period of immersion, but in the end, you've then got to almost come out the other side and be like, well, I'm just less bothered now. And that, ironically, is the most attractive frame to have, I think.
Yes, I'd agree with that. Hi guys, how do you overcome limiting belief you cannot get women because of your race? Where are you from, out of interest? I guess, Mr. Justin, it's all a game. It's all game. Just most guys are at the dating stage. I think game has to do with that phase. AT. Tuss, can you write a memoir? No. But we're supposed to be doing a podcast, Dancing on the Edge of a Knife, which is all the tales from our crypt, myself and Troy's collective crypt, that we will start doing soon when we join forces in Brazil.
There is one episode up though. There is one episode up. So if you go on Spotify and search for Dancing
that's a perfect example of us not eating our own medicine, isn't it? Just yes. Completely whim to our emotion, not sticking to what we say, that we're going to do an episode a week just because we didn't feel like it. But we're objects in motion as well. We are also learning in the game of life. We're not perfect. Game physician, I'm Middle Eastern Arab. Well, you're sorted, mate. I mean, you've got all the Ruskies sucking off camels over there, all the Instagram girls, so no issue. Fine, aren't you?
Yeah. I wouldn't really. I wouldn't really worry about that, man. To be honest,
I know lots of Middle East who do pretty well with white women.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, there are some races where, you know, historically and sort of culturally, that guys think that they've got more of a problem than other guys. But I mean, it comes down to the individual, really. I mean, we know Indian guys who are absolutely smashing it, and then we know Indian guys who are in a whole world of pain. And it's not about the race so much; it's about the individual, you know.
Yes, agreed. So, anything else to add? Coming up to the hour, I guess we can go 5 more minutes or 4 more minutes.
Yeah. There was something kind of interesting before. Is it true that David? Is it true that David Wigan died? Got no idea, and I don't know very much about him either, to be honest. Greetings from Poland. Reading 3% Man to Sustain or Deal Relationships. A big up today game is being free from social. So 3% Man is by what's his name? Famous dating coach. Anyway, yeah, well, good stuff.
Any good? Have you read it?
I think it was okay. I listened to the audiobook last year. It was somebody in the comments. If you know who wrote it, remind me of the he's quite a Justin Wayne, I think it is. Yeah, it was okay. It was okay. It's a little bit old school, but it's all right.
Corey, no, it's the ball guy, isn't it?
Corey Wayne.
Right. And what's the premise of the book? Any groundbreaking new insights?
I forget, to be honest. I forget. I need to go back to it. It did make a huge impression on me. I sort of listened to it. Advice for approaching younger women and not feeling you're too old.
How old are you, good sir? Because
I bet he's like 32 or something. It's like, oh man,
Wheat Waffles.
Yeah.
Like
Wheat Waffles.
It's like, Waffles, yeah, age pill by 18-year-olds, and he's like 23. It's like, bro, your game's weak. I mean, look, not to say your game's weak. I mean, I respect any man who's out approaching, but the reality is, if you're getting excuses, you know, and you're 23 years old, and women are saying you're too old, it's not you're too old, unless you're approaching kids. It's the fact you're just not doing it right.
Yeah. Okay. So he's 50 plus. Well, I mean, I think you should put that out of your mind, because it's like any sort of objection that she might have. I mean, she might not like the clothes you wear. She might not like how tall you are. She might not like your hair, whatever, right? It's like that, but it's for her to bring up the objections, not you. So you have to just go and talk to people that you find interesting or attractive and let the chips fall where they may, really. I mean, some women are going to be put off, maybe. Other women aren't. And it's like any other objection that she might have. You know, maybe you're too skinny, maybe you're too muscular, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things that she could project you on. You don't know until you go into that interaction and find out. And it's
90% of approaching can usually be solved by just approaching more, because guys just simply aren't approaching enough. That's the reality. And also, if he has an issue with his age, in his mind, that will manifest as women pick up on that. You don't give a fuck about your age, and you look younger, you look good. And lo and behold, I've never heard a girl ever in the entire time we've traveled around the world have an issue with your age, right? Or even bother to ask you. You know, so it's it's what you need to own your reality. You need to own your perceived flaws, because otherwise they will manifest as people picking up on.
Well, just don't think about it. Just try and put it out of your mind and just approach anyway and see what happens, because it's down to, it's like it's sales, isn't it? It's like you don't give the objections to the sale. You just go in and present the product and see if they want to buy it, right? It's for them to give the objections, not for you to preempt the objections. Well,
yeah, the amount of times guys self-sabotage on that, like, in the conversation to the girl when she's kind of like looking, she looks away for a bit. He's like, oh, do you need to go? It's like, don't actually
throw
yourself past.
Actually, I'll correct that. I suppose in sales you can preempt objections, actually, but in the case of this, it's not really you shouldn't be the one to give her the excuses, or even to not try and make the sale in the first place because you're ruling yourself out of the game, right? That's her job, and she'll do it. I mean, they'll quite willingly do it. So there's no point in you helping them. She'll quite happily reject you anyway. So what is there to lose really from making that approach?
And on that note, the final point we want to make is the ability to lean into rejection really does determine your success, not just in dating, but in everything. Because you're going to get a lot of no's in this game, right? We always say good stats are 1 in 30, right? So you approach 30 women, running game, the girl is younger and hotter than you. 1 in 3 approaches a phone number, 10 numbers, 2 dates, let's say, if you're doing it right, and you sleep with one of those girls. That means 29 times out of 30, it doesn't work out. But if you're going with this idea of focusing on the process, self-amusing, falling in love with this idea of becoming a social animal and becoming a charismatic, seductive motherfucker as the main goal, women will fall into your life by not making them the ultimate focus and by not making sleeping with the girl the ultimate focus, which is the mistake a lot of guys make. So leaning into the process and realizing rejection is just part of the game. It's just there's a lot of non-compatible women out there, right? So it's just how it is, and it's often not. It's not personal. She doesn't know you. She's just not sexually available, not her type. That's okay, right? That's fucking okay. But we live in such a soft society that guys are like, oh my god, 3 approaches I could never approach again. It's like fucking man up a bit, right? Not that big.
Well, again, you've got to focus on. It's almost like being a bit selfish about this and focusing on yourself. And it's like, okay, I've spoken to 3 people and 3 people aren't interested in me, but I still want to get what I want to get. So I'm going to carry on. And it's not worrying about their feedback. It's like, right, I still want to get what I want to get. It's like, I mean, again, like I bring up Paul Mosey about 3 times in this thing today. But he was talking about doing he was doing some flyering for gyms early in his career, and he was getting mentored by this guy. And the guy said, well, how many test flyers did you put out? And he said, I put out 300 test flyers and I didn't get anything back. And the guy who was mentoring him said, well, we normally test 5,000 flyers, and that's before we even do the full run. And it's like your volume is just not enough. You know, it's like the volume is just not enough. So he said he was testing his results, which was 0. He was measuring those against a guy who does 5,000 as a test and then does, you know. So again, it's volume is key here. You know, volume is really, really key. He had a good quote actually. It was something like, "What seems like an outlier, or what seems like a fatal flaw on a small test is simply a sign that you haven't done enough volume." Because if you do enough volume, then you're like, oh right, actually, 1 in 30 women do actually like me. 1 in 30 women actually do, you know. But if you 100%.
Look, if you can sleep with 1 decent girl from cold approach, that can be extrapolated to 1,000 on a long enough volume level. The issue I sometimes, the chicken and the egg thing sometimes, which I do feel for guys on, is they've done 300 approach and they haven't got anything, and there's usually something just inherently, I mean, what's the word? It's just that they're putting out a certain vibe, or there's something, you know, maybe slightly on the spectrum, but there's something very off-putting on a subconscious level when women are all saying no and they just don't get a result. That's very hard to keep going. But if you've slept with 1 girl from cold approach, you can sleep with 100, you can sleep with 1,000, because it means you know, it can be done. Yeah, so usually it's just do more numbers. 90% of the approach problems can be solved by just doing more reps. Right, approaching more. It doesn't mean going up to women begging. You're still going up with this amused mastery frame of, okay, you know, it's this vibe of, okay, you're cute. What else have you got? Right, in a playful kind of alpha way. That's how cold approach should be. Not going up begging for the number or any of this, you know. But really, I think guys need to just track their stats a bit and just do more reps. It always comes down to lack of consistency, really, because when guys are actually doing the reps, usually they figure it out.
Yeah, indeed. On a long enough timeline with enough reps. And when we say reps, it's just like being social every day.
Being social every day, and literally putting yourself in environments where you can meet people. You know, so taking a walk. I used to take, you know, when I was working in London, I used to walk from London Bridge to Liverpool Street deliberately in the mornings because I know I'd see a couple of cute girls and I'd open them. And I used to walk back the same route. And for lunch, I used to go to Liverpool Street Station, just kind of have a coffee and sit and watch the world go by because I knew it was going to be busy and there'll be a couple of cute girls. So it's again, self-mastery, self-discipline, thinking about, right, we all have the same 24 hours in the day, whether you're Jeff Bezos in his platinum spaceship or whether you're the hobo on the street injecting fucking a speedball, right? What are you allocating your time to? Because every second that ticks by, you never get back. It's claimed by death. Every minute that goes past, 4,000 weeks, that's all you have from open to close, the average lifespan. So where are you getting your time? Your time, your energy, your attention, your most valuable assets. If you want to get better at this, you have to be speaking to women consistently, because you can't get good at any skill set without doing it with frequency. It isn't rocket science, but I don't know why guys find this so hard to understand. If they don't speak to 20 women a week, you're probably not going to get laid, right?
Yeah.
and you're sitting in your house going, no, I'm really unattractive. It's like you haven't spoken to a single member of the opposite sex for the last 4 weeks. Why are you suddenly going to be up to your nuts and guts? It doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But the problem is in a comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan Tuber said, agreed. He's talking about the age thing again. Agreed, but it's hard to get it out of my head. I mean, if you want to drop me an email, Troy@realtroyfrancis.com, we can have more of a chat about it. But I mean, there's other factors involved though. Really, it's like, how do you look? How do you come across? How do you dress? What's your vibe like? I mean, there's so many different aspects to this. But yeah, drop me an email if you want to have a further chat about it for sure.
And when are you going to do another collaboration with Fresh and Nutsack, Mr. Troy? I mean, Fresh and Fit.
Sorry, I didn't put that one up. Well, I don't know actually. I'm going to Miami soon, so I need to speak to them and see if there's any possibility of doing anything. I mean, it says, when are you going to do a collab? I mean, I've been on the show several times over the past few years. So we nearly did something in London, didn't we? But it didn't come to fruition in the end. We nearly did we nearly did an approach-a-thon with them in London, but it didn't quite come to fruition. Sadly.
Hopefully in the future, eh?
Yes.
We will do this again soon. If you guys for Rio Carnival, get in touch. Info at jamesuss.com or Troy@realtroyfrancis.com. The bootcamp of 2025, the most social, the most wild, the most fun. Horny Brazilian women from all over Brazil coming into Rio to party, to meet gringos, is not to be missed. Myself, Troy, Les, Joe, a number of other coaches will be there, and 10 clients. It's going to be a fucking blinder. So get in touch, send us an email titled Rio Carnival 2025, and we will reconvene, Mr. Francis, soon, won't we, for another live?
Indeed, we will. We'll try and get these in a bit more regularly in the run up to that.
And if you've got any, if guys have any questions that they want answered, we can kick off, the talks with or the webinars just with a topic of the day, and for the prevalent thing there was breakups. So if you guys have, comment below if there's a particular topic you want to see covered, and me and Troy will go into some detail on it at the beginning of the next webinar. Indeed,
we will. Good stuff. All right, drop us an email if you're up for coming over to Rio, which you should be, and we'll see you again very soon. Okay, bye-bye.